Hello everyone, this is Madiha Ahmed here, and I am so excited to be I'm so excited to be here. And today's session is going to be about how to ace a virtual interview. Now, I'm very thrilled to be speaking on this subject, and it's been a lovely experience so far to be interacting and working with the Jobs for Her team, because every time they come up with a very exciting topic and a very exciting area of the women's professional life for me to cover. So today I'll be starting with a brief about my own journey into virtual work. And actually, I started as a professional in a virtual company called Life Bushido, which is based out of USA. And a lot of trouble that I faced initially was about that transition from being used to a physical space and suddenly moving to a virtual space and being able to talk about things and do effective communication virtually. So one of some of the major challenges that I faced, I would be talking about that. And of course, as your questions pour in and as I keep getting your questions, I'll be connecting my own experience with your question. So the first one is by Nandini Sinha, who asks, is the preparation for a virtual interview different from a regular one? Good question, Nandini. So when we speak of virtual interview, of course, the major difference is that physically you are not seeing anything. Physically, you don't have that tension and that excitement and all of that. So it's a total different experience from being a virtual person in the interview as well as compared to when you are physically there. So one of the major challenges I think is about that impression you can give. So being a public speaker myself, I was always very confident that if given a chance to meet someone publicly, I would be able to convince people. But supposing if it came to a platform where I would have to virtually communicate with people, I wasn't sure, because you don't know if the other person will get you. Supposing there are technical glitches and the tone is not conveyed exactly how you meant it. So there are different concerns that will be there. And of course, the other difference is in terms of having that sometimes if we come from a home which is maybe sometimes I stayed in my previous house which was a little old. So I was always worried, oh, will the background look perfect? Is it going to look proper? Am I going to look appropriate? And we all want to look modern and something. So if you dress up and if you go to a physical space, you can like nobody cares about what kind of a house you're living in or what kind of background you have. But yes, sometimes it affects confidence of a lot of people that I've seen. If the background is not perfect or if they don't stay in a house that they're proud of, a lot of times it affects their confidence when they're physically there. Another thing is the way you dress up, the way you look in that particular limited space as compared to when you can physically walk and pull things off. So I'll talk about more. I will just quickly answer briefly their questions and go into depth thereafter. Avantika Bharat asks, what are the essentials for a virtual interview? So Avantika, give me some moments. I will just take up some time and then dive right into each of the different aspects. Reena Matthew, as an HR manager, how do I prepare myself for a virtual interview? Brilliant question from the management aspect. If you had to take a virtual interview, perhaps. So one of the most important things, I'll start with this immediately, Reena. So when we speak of someone who's into leadership and who will look at a virtual interview, I think pressure is comparatively less, because you can go back and take recordings and kind of have more tools to assess a person. So that way, as a person who's selecting people, I think it's a great way to kind of assess people on various grounds. So if somebody is that you're meeting is physically present in front of you, it's very easy for you as a person, because of experience, to assess that person. Okay, this person's body language, this person this and that. But if you are going for a virtual setup, a virtual interview, then chances are that you get a better quality, a better talent, a better person, a human resource for your company, because at that time you are assessing them on their technical skills, you are assessing them for how quickly they're adapting to situations, how quickly they're into problem solving, and a lot of things will really help. One very important thing is that how do you prepare yourself as a management? I think the questions, it's very important that supposing you always have to be ready for something going wrong technically, because you do not know how effective and how resourceful the other person on the other side is with technology. So chances are that the other person will kind of not understand Either it's sometimes even accent I've seen, like because I was part of a US based organization earlier, I used to see a lot of times people being confused about, how the certain words were pronounced or why they were pronounced a certain way, and then the speed of the interaction or the communication that happened. So it's very important to identify the important questions, keep two or three as a priority, and thereafter keep a few in your list, so that in case time permits, if the other person is able to pull off comfortably and effectively on through technology, then you can go for more questions. Another very important thing is, see, I do understand that different roles require a different expertise and not everyone has to know everything. But today's world, I think one very important thing is how quickly a person is able to adapt to technology. One is through problem solving. Second is, if through interview you want to kind of use some digital tools for collaboration, for typing, if it's a group interview that's happening, then go for something which includes collaboration between different people. There are many of them, and like some of the resources which are there is like Zoom is there, Go To Meetings, Blue Jeans. There are many others that you will find, and like a Good Time is one of them. So these are resources which help you kind of collaborate with third parties. And then if you are able to kind of ensure and also observe how different people in a virtual setup are interacting with each other, I think it really really helps to sift and filter the right candidates for a company. So I'll come back into this. Let's move to the next question. Nishita Padiwal says, how to portray myself in the best way possible in a virtual interview. I'll answer that question. How to judge the interviewer's psyche when I am not physically present with them, Rinku Sharma. How to work on my communication skills while preparing for a virtual interview. Okay, so I will start with some of these basic things, looking at the questions. So, one of the very important things to understand and remember is when you are doing a virtual interview, there is a high chance that everybody feels, oh, I have to make a good impression on the person by having XYZ listed and checklist done, ticked, completed. But what's very important to understand is when you are thinking of a virtual interview, one of the very powerful things which can work in your favor, which would not otherwise maybe work in a physical setup. Because physical setup mein what can otherwise work is your body language. Supposing you're good with some other things externally, a lot of other things can add on, and play an like role of making things easy for you or work in your favor. But when it comes to a virtual interview, your primary factor and the primary strength has to be expression, how you express your facial expressions, all of that, how you type, how quickly you react and respond, all of that is going to play a very critical role in either putting a good impression across or getting the right kind of idea about the other person. Now, one very important thing on either side, whether you're the person who's interviewed or you are interviewing, is instructions. I think if you're someone who's being like going for an interview for the first time, or someone who's very technically handicapped, no matter what it is, I will tell general rules for all of you. One very important thing is focus on getting the instructions right. Read it properly ahead of time if there are instructions given. On spot, if something has been told to you, listen to the instructions properly instead of thinking of what to answer. If you do not understand any particular question that is thrown at you, or if you want a clarification, instead of acting, oh, do you mean this? Oh, this is the thing. Oh, could you please explain? Instead of that, ask an intelligent question. Reframe it in a way. So, sir, do you mean this is what we are referring? Are you referring to this, or is it this? So, when you give an option between two options that you thought, the other person thinks you are intelligent. You are able to process. You are able to structure things and analyze things. And when you give two options, the other person knows that you are trying to understand the person. Second is having the right attitude. A lot of times we feel overconfident that we have followed instructions, or we feel, oh, did I even get it right? Did you mean this? Don't show that. Have the right attitude of doing your best and actually doing your best to figure out things. Yes, if things do not make sense after that, reframe the question, as I said, with options, because that takes things in your favor. People start thinking this person is smart, is intelligent, is spontaneous, is able to connect things. Then the second important thing is time management. I think one of the very important things is to manage time. If you're someone who's interviewing somebody, I think it's important to keep a track of time. a lot of times the person in front of you will have lots to say, because either they are very excited, very honest, so they will give too many details, or they're very nervous and therefore they'll keep saying whatever comes to their mind and not being able to give you the exact context. So one very important thing is, I do not feel it is rude in my conversation with corporate trainings, or the trainings that I do for schools or with adults or with children. I think one very important role that a person who's interviewing has to play is to figure out a way to be polite yet firm, and to have the right questions to stop people and then to go to the next level. And it shouldn't come across as rude or harsh, because not many people even today are very comfortable with virtual interview. So I'll give you a quick option example. So supposing if you're someone who's talking a lot, or someone in front of you is talking a lot, I think the best way to do it is this. Make a face which shows that you're interested to know more, which should be the real case. Don't make it up just like that, but have that intention of knowing more. So stop them and say, you know what, this is really good, so can you tell me a little bit about this as well, like what do you think about this? So when you stop someone like that, it shows that you as someone from the company is actually interested in a person who is trying to apply for your job, for the job that you're giving, or for any role that's opened. I think that really helps. Now another thing is the response time. I think whether it comes to the emails that you have to respond to, virtual interview may not always be a face to face video. It could also be an email which you have to answer back at times, and then maybe an interview face to face comes. So one very important thing is the response time. You have to know the company's rule and policy in that, whether they expect a 24 hours, and most of the time it is that for most companies, that you have to respond back within 24 hours. So that's one of the things. Another thing is response time in physical conversations, like virtual conversation, face to face. So I think there what really matters is the, so supposing if somebody is asking a question, I think somebody will take 1 minute to kind of figure things out. One way to make things easy is to have a pen and paper in front of you. I always do, whether I'm interviewing someone or being interviewed by someone. The reason is, when you can make the notes, when you can put down the keywords, it helps connect with people a lot better. Secondly, you won't lose the flow of thought that's going on if you have the keywords right in front of you. So that's one of the things. Then email, when you're responding back, I think one very important thing, if it's an email, is this, that you remember whether the person is asking you to send to all or reply to all, or is it CC to somebody specific, BCC, blind carbon copy to someone, what is the subject heading which is expected. Also, if there's an attachment which is required, so cross check, just go back, save it in the draft, check if it is attached or not. Once you're sure, then you send ahead. And of course, the body introduction and conclusion leaves a good impression. A very important thing for the person who's interviewing or being interviewed is the scheduler. I think it's a brilliant idea to schedule it and sync meetings and your Google calendars with the person who you are going to be working with, or you are exploring with, because once you have it, you have 30 minutes before the meeting notification or email, or whatever options are there. Same thing, a day before, and then few days before, if it's a long time, that's that is there between the day when the appointment was given and the day finally when it happens. So a very important thing is the choice of the interview website. I think whether it is about the person who's going to interview, it's important that you figure out as a company what are the things that matter to you, what are the things that you're looking for in a person and that you want to assess virtually, and accordingly go for a platform which supports it. Then if you're someone who is being interviewed, I think very important is to be able to understand what is that platform all about, how does it work. So one way to look at it is to get a first hand experience of the same. If it has a free trial option, the app or the website or a service which the company is going to use, it's good if you kind of check it out, have a first hand experience of it, watch some tutorials on YouTube or that particular website itself. From FAQs, find out what is exactly the troubleshooting that would be required. Have a good preparation plan behind. Even if things fail, you'll still look more confident because you know your stuff, you've done the stuff. Also, if possible, you can test your mic and camera ahead of time, so that when you're already join 5 minutes before, check it once more. And another thing is about privacy. Whether, I think a lot of times, when people are very desperate for jobs, and they're like, oh, I finally found this company, must be great. It's very important to do a background check of the company. I know it should be reversed, but I'm telling you this because of my own personal experience, there are two ways to look at this. One way to look at it is that you want to do background checks so that you know that what kind of questions do you want to ask the company. A lot of times there are bad reviews and good reviews about certain companies. Some are, of course, limited cases, some are in bulk. So if you have a previous, knowledge of what kind of a feedback or rating that particular company has got, what kind of experience the people working in that company have had in the past, I think it really helps to get prepared, what they will do wrong, and accordingly you go prepared with the right mindset and be a winner. Secondly, it could be that, so supposing if you're someone who's doing a background check, the reason I say this is because when you have to answer questions, you will know exactly what is the vision and mission of the company, who are their clients, what kind of things they have dealt with in the past. So that gives you a different confidence when you bring in values which you are either connecting with in that company, or that you feel you are able to kind of come prepared and show the people that your work that you are trying to being interviewed from, that what exactly your mindset is, that of preparation, that of interest. And of course everybody likes, whether it is in relationships or in professional life, that you are interested in something or someone, right? So that's one of the things. Now let me go back to a few questions again. How to work on my communication skills while preparing for a virtual interview, Shruti Hansalia. All right, so communication, virtual communication is one of the trainings, like one of the expert chats we will be doing in future, so please check that out. I'll be covering it in brief though. Yes, what are the basics in terms of appearance and background during a virtual interview? Lavina asks that. So, very good question. I think one very important criteria is the kind of clothes that you select for an interview. I know it should not matter, confidence, personalities, everything, but it gets very disturbing psychologically to look at something. What I mean is, if you have a plain background, have clothes, one of the things which is a little darker, and always go for less flashy, less, kind of, like too much of bright colors. Go for decent colors, navy blue, like navy green, or colors black, white. Go according to the background. So if you have a light background, choose colors which are dark. If the background is light, choose colors of clothes which, so dark background, light clothes, dark clothes, light background. That really helps to create an impression, like psychologically, when you're looking at someone. A very important thing is also the lighting of the room. So natural light is good at times. At times, if you feel, see, one very important thing is to not feel stuffy. So for instance, if you can see, there may be a lot of light in my room. The reason is I want to feel comfortable. It's not about showing the best lighting that there is and shut off everything. I want to feel comfortable in my own environment, and therefore I'll be able to convey impactfully and effectively. So that's one of the things. The same way, when you are in an interview, it's important that you just make sure noise is less and the lighting is good, but it shouldn't be that you feel too stuffy or too cold and you want to show you're sitting in an AC room, therefore you have to shut off everything and you may not be comfortable. So one very important thing is the comfort zone that you need to have yourself. Next thing is, Amruta Joshi asks, for a person who is technologically challenged, do you have some tips to at least get through with a virtual interview? Very, very apt question. The reason I say this is because today I see a lot of men and women not being ready for virtual interviews. I think virtual communication is something we as a country will take some time to master. And it's, I mean, a lot of times if we feel, oh, the other person had a great experience because it was virtual, it's not always that. It's also because it's a new experience that people are excited. But over a period of time, the engagement level that you have, the amount of effective conversation and impact you're able to create is not equivalent to the excitement and the happiness factor of so many people. It's a lot to do about how much thought you've put into the methodology, the content, because what you do physically in a physical setup is going to undergo a huge change when you're doing virtually. So be it the questions you ask, how you ask, what do you expect a person to do, a lot can undergo transformation if you really are looking at impact and effectiveness in virtual communication or interviews. One very important thing, Lavina, as I said, is that, if, no, Amruta, is that, when you are the first timer, when you are still fresh into all of this, as I said, download the app, play around with it, ask another person in your house or in your colleague circle to kind of just do, or friend circle to just kind of learn it with you, do it with somebody in another room, in another house, in another area, so that you know that what can go wrong, what can go right. So that's one of the things. Also, Shweta Kamath asks, as someone who is fresh out of college, I have never given interviews, How do I work towards acing a virtual interview? Very good question. If you're fresh out of college, I think you are going to be very energetic most of the time, or too lazy and laid back and not sure of what to do and how to impress, because maybe you do not have the experience of having worked with so many people, having interacted with so many people. Or sometimes I see students from certain colleges, especially engineering colleges, very bored with their own kind of curriculum and stuff. I think that happens with other colleges too. So they don't have that excitement. For them, job is something, a security, or at times if it's like a very enthusiastic person interested to learn, then it's a different story. But a lot of times it's more out of a need than a want. I mean, depends from person to person, but I'm talking the majority in this case. So, what is very important to understand is, as I said, do some background research. Secondly, a very important part of this is to have some kind of practice. There are many people who offer a lot of career tips, who offer interview tips. There are guidance, like a lot of guidance in the form of website articles, or I'm sure Jobs for Her itself has a lot of resources for that. But I would suggest, talk to real people one to one to figure out things. Go to a mentor. And one of the very important things, I think here I would like to add, if you're looking at a virtual job or a virtual interview, to have someone who you look up to as a mentor or a very close friend, but more than close friend, a mentor who you connect with frequently in the beginning, and then later on over a like monthly schedule or a fortnight schedule or something, where you're talking to someone who you need guidance and help from virtually. I'll tell you this, it helped me because when one of my mentors, who's Steve Cantor from USA Life Bushido company that I told you about, I think one of the things that really, really helped me was the first of all the cultural gap, because we're so different from India and USA, and then our own upbringing and our experiences. So that really, I mean, changes the game the way you interact virtually with someone. And age gap, of course, how the other person would understand as compared to how you would do it. Secondly, one very important thing again, when you have a mentor or someone who you look up to, will give you a good practice to ask the right kind of questions to you and for you to figure out things. So if you're going for life coaching or career counseling, maybe go for people, or even like people who can teach you something of oral communication digitally. I think that is a great way to start looking at virtual interview preparation if you're fresh out of college and you have no experience how to talk virtually on things. How to be influential on a virtual interview? Okay, I'm coming back to the points which I had told you I would tell you all about. So yes, when you're talking of technology in a virtual interview, I think again, as I said, you would have to download stuff, figure out things a little ahead of time, look up tutorials. Very important, have a charged device. A lot of times we are spending the whole day working on our phones and we have so many excuses that we didn't get time. If you didn't get time to charge, sit with a charger so that it's close by, sit near a plug point so that you can plug in quickly and not have that embarrassment of, oh, I forgot, I'm sorry, can I just go and get my charger? It's okay, that can happen, the worst case scenario, but try to avoid that scenario at all times, because already time is limited. The other person does not have all the time in the world to interview you at times, and not everybody is going to be sweet and adjusting and accommodating. So that's one of the things. Then body language, I wanted to discuss a bit, that a lot of times, when we speak to someone who is virtual, so either it makes us feel, oh, I'm so modern, I can speak like this, I have this accent which is so powerful, and I'm talking to someone from US or UK and somebody from another country, and the culture and the accent and the foreigner look appeals to us, and we feel, oh, I can also do this. But a lot of times, when we come across as fake and we come across as someone who's trying to impress or match up to the standards of someone in front of you, I think it messes up things a lot. And I'll tell you why it messes up, because people are not foolish these days. Companies, when they hire and virtually, see, one thing about virtual communication, virtual work, anything is this, the virtual businesses, the COVID-19 scenario has actually made it very, very clear that in the times to come, not every company is going to thrive. If people have been fooling the customers, if companies have been fooling, the clients from a physical setup and making things, making them happy, but it's not going to work if your focus is not there, if you're not skilled in real sense, then long-term business will not be possible for you. So you have to be ready for the reality of the virtual business, virtual communication, virtual everything virtual. You have to be ready as a company, and as someone who wants to apply for work. 21st century jobs are going to require you to be effective in virtual communication. And so that brings me to the point that, okay, as many people are going to be talking to you and you're going to be physically there, if you're fake, it will give out a vibe which is not going to be very pleasant, or it's going to confuse the other person and might want to give you another chance to look at things instead of the first go get thing, which might just work in your favor if you were real and natural. So here what happens is, I'll tell you, there are two things. It's about the look and it's about the accent, it's about the dress up, a lot of things. So when I speak of accent, a lot of times, like I'll give you my example. When I worked with the US organization, it was very natural that if I kept hearing a lot of people, so there are two ways in which people fake the accent or mess up the accent. One is that you are hearing a lot of times a different culture all the time, so your accent naturally undergoes a change, and that happens with me a lot of times. Since I speak to people in different geographies and different parts of India, sometimes I keep talking to different people, so I get confused. Oh, this was the accent, this was the word. That's natural, but what's important is you fix it. But again, the other reason is to impress someone and to pick up a accent to show something, that you are also modern, you are also capable, or you are also a little higher than the rest. That's not a sign of modern, not average, not at all. I think what's very important is the accent, that the way I speak, I feel proud it's speaking like this in front of anybody, because that's the Indianness in me and it reflects. That's fine. What's the problem? So it's important. British, American don't, and a lot of times I see people messing up between British and American accent pronunciations. So because you're not someone who's trained and doesn't know, you're not working in a company which is out of UK or USA, and therefore you're not a part of their work so ingrained that you know their accent so perfectly. So you are likely to take a bit from the British accent, a bit from the American accent, and make a big mess out of your own branding and impression that you're giving out to the person. Another thing is the look. Many times, people feel that when they're doing a virtual video or an interview or something, they like, looking a little attractive because it's like plain blank, so have a red lipstick or something. A lot of times as women, it's very important that you give out the right message. I'm not saying that makeup is bad or this or that, but because I have worked for the last 6 to 8 years virtually interacting with people, and I've been effective across geographies, across domains and platforms and age groups, I'm saying this from experience, that the way you dress up and the way you look, you either win trust or you lose it, or you kind of get confused. So look at the occasion, have a light lipstick, that's okay, have a lip balm, but don't go overboard to show the impression that, okay, that's looking nice. If I apply a red lipstick, it's going to look very attractive to the other person, and therefore, I'm going to look presentable. That's not really the idea of presentable. What is going to make things work in your favor is the way you communicate the ideas that you have. And that brings me to the next point of the content itself, which I think I would be covering from two angles. I would be covering it from the angle of the person who is interviewing and the person who is interviewed. So what I mean here is, when it comes to content, I think one very important thing to ensure on both sides, whether it's the person who's interviewed or the one interviewing, is this, that you kind of have a natural conversation rather than making it very stiff. Because if you're someone who's hiring for India especially, or from India, I think one very important thing to look at is people are not really very comfortable with natural conversations online. It's not very common, not very that they do every day, or they might be wanting to do it, but they may not have the confidence to pull off online. So one very important thing to look at is to have a natural conversation, build it up, have a logical progression so that the other person is able to follow and kind of connect things and not be lost all over or wondering what the topic is all about. Also, one very important thing is to ask questions if you don't understand. Now, what I mean here is, if you don't understand something and you want to ask a question, it has to be firstly polite. It cannot be very rude and harsh or too foolish and silly. Second, you can look up a few resources on the art of asking questions, because a lot of times, we judge people based on the answers that they give. But in my opinion, and according to me, I think it's very important to know how to ask the right questions, to frame the right questions, because you may not always have the answer to something. Whether you are a person who's part of the company or person who's employing for the company, I think it's not possible to always have answers to everything. But what can, test your caliber, your character, your real potential is the quality of your questions. So if you're someone who is going for the first time to this company and being interviewed, if you are able to give another, thought-provoking question as a response to something that you do not know, you can say, I don't know this. But I wonder if that is possible. But I guess so. I mean, have a way of structuring your idea as a question if you're not sure what what is the right way to look at it, or what is the expected answer. So when you make it as an open-ended, intelligent, broad question, the other person feels, this person looks, there's substance in this person. This person has a way of figuring out things as a question and helping people to figure out further rather than giving answers. So that's very important. Second thing is to kind of understand that so this is one thing that I said, art of asking questions. So you are asking questions. So I'll give another example here. So when you're asking a question as someone who's interviewing someone, it's very important to not go for very specific questions, because when you ask what was your childhood like, or like what do you think about this, I think it becomes very obvious and boring, because most people will come with that frame of mind that, okay, if this is a job for this particular domain, I should know XYZ terms and therefore I'll crack that. It's so dumb and stupid if we go with that psychology and that frame of mind. So what is very important is, if you're asking about the life of a person whom you're interviewing, maybe the question can be more around a comparative, like what was it in childhood versus your teenager life that you saw in this particular thing, so in this service that you had access to. Similarly, what was it about your college days, and what do you think about your colleges compared to your other friends in other colleges? So when you make it a comparative study, and you give a person that opportunity to draw comparisons, to compare, to think, beyond their own situation, it actually helps you assess the person correctly, that how is this person actually in analytical skills, logical skills, empathy, and also interested in the domain and the field and the people around. These are really good things to kind of understand and look at when you kind of want to go for hiring the right kind of people. Also, details. I think one very important thing when it comes to content is, a lot of people get confused how much of detail, how much to ask, how much to not ask, and how much to kind of focus on and how much to kind of leave out. Because it might be like a time constraint, that okay, I do not have all the time in the world. How do I figure out I'm going to be like for instance, you can be confused that, will the person who's asking me a question expecting a short answer, a long answer, a specific scenario, a specific question, what is it? So you can be confused about all of that. But what's very important to understand is that, as one way of doing it is to reframe a question and figure out, okay, like, reframe the question. Is it this you are referring to, or is it something else? So that's one way to look at it. Second way to look at it is to kind of look at the keywords that the other person is saying. So what I mean is that the other person can be talking of change or transformation or journey. So these are different words which you have to pay attention to, because if you do not pay attention to the keywords that the person is asking you to look at, I think it's going to be a waste of time, because there won't be any productivity, there won't be any kind of happiness factor or satisfaction factor. Yes, you can play around with words. Now see, again, when you talk of an interview, it depends on what kind of company that you apply for. So I'll give you an idea. When you go for a company which is, let's say, typically catering to a mass majority type, in domains like that, where everybody, like, bulk recruitment takes place, for example, those kind of companies will have certain criteria of how they want a certain answer to be, and you must know those. Whereas there are some companies which would be either not necessarily out of US, they can be Indian companies, but there are certain companies in India or outside of India who are kind of who look at that application mindset, growth mindset, will look at the higher thinking, in the kind of employees that they're expecting to recruit, or the kind of answers that they're expecting. So you have to really know what kind of a company that you're applying for. If you're part of a college, or if you're part of a group which is kind of connecting you to the people who are going to employ you, I think it's very important to take their guidance and advice and suggestions on how exactly to go about, what are their previous experiences with people who have applied for that job, what kind of trainings were required to kind of crack through those interviews, and what were their expectations out of it. Maybe you can speak to a few seniors in the same company. So it's amazing, JobsForHer has so many different groups and areas that they're working on. So if you kind kind of tap into one and see that, okay, if it's about, a technical company that you're applying for as a freelancer, so freelancer group is also there, technical women in tech group is also there. Similarly, it's wonderful, how you can be having so many things to look at, and so many different groups that you can take learnings from. So if you're part of Jobs for Her, do utilize these resources that are already there. Now, a few last, concluding comments. I'm waiting out for more questions if there are any. Uh, a very important thing is to understand that when it comes to practice, when I said practice, I think a lot of people do not understand that practice is not something that comes few days before. What is very important is you would have to be ready ahead of time. Ahead of time, as in if you're someone who's at college, you have to have some goals, some idea about what kind of a company that you could possibly apply for, and therefore look up resources, read up things on that. Maybe 6 months is a good time to start looking at things before the interview date. Actually talk to people, talk to mentors, have mentors from different backgrounds who can give you diverse perspectives on things. Secondly, what's very important to also keep in mind is when you're looking at a woman, so in Jobs for Her we look at women for starting, restarting and rising. So there are women who, let's say, I'll break up this these three words. When we say start, it means somebody doing for the first time. So let's say you are a woman who, so I'll define who you are and tell, and then maybe your questions can be around that. So if you're someone who's starting for the first time and virtual interview and job is completely new for you, and job itself in the first place, and then the technical part, so I think one very important thing to look at is to have a small community of women whom you can talk to and interact with virtually every week, every month, something like that, every 15 days, not on the phone call but virtually. If you have a good chat, even about personal things, about professional things, it helps you, have some idea, because it's a comfort zone with women you already know. So if you start talking at that point, I think it really helps. Another thing, if you're starting from scratch in terms of the technical part, I have already covered, but I'm going back to the job and then the technical requirement of the job. I think one other very important thing is to have some knowledge of, have content, have skills, because it's no longer about you're able to do it with your hands and you're able to show it in the data. No, virtual is all about expression, how you communicate. Chances are at times you will struggle through language. You may not be very confident with a certain language. English may not be your comfort zone, so you can be speaking in Telugu, you can be speaking in Tamil, Marathi, Hindi, English, Bengali, any other language that's there. And if you kind of get comfortable in that first and talk to people virtually and then in the English language, I think then it becomes easier for you to connect with people, and then you start developing that virtual communication skills through a familiar language with familiar people to familiar and unfamiliar languages and people thereafter. That's one way to look at it for the start point. Another point under this is the restart point. So let's say you are someone, I'm looking at women who spent a lot of time kind of was in the workforce, really working very hard, and then getting into a maybe either personal life or some kind of restriction or some kind of commitment and priority that came into picture, because of which you had to kind of distance yourself from work and then go back to work. One very, and especially this happens when we have children, and then we do not have the same amount of time to skill ourselves or to kind of equip ourselves or have the preparation time. One good way to do it is to have either a platform where you are able to use technology to teach your child. I think it works brilliantly, because why I say this is because when you can teach something to someone, that shows that you have a skill. And as mothers, we are very equipped to kind of do anything for our child, go to any extent to learn math and science and geography and history and English language and literature that we may not have studied in our own time properly, but we'll make it a point to study well to be able to teach our children well. So same thing works for technology. Seek husband's help, seek the help of people who know around you. So I think when you're able to do that, and then you're able to help out the child or look up things on your own, and then when you teach your child, sit with your child and teach them something, show them something. When your child is with you, it's also a good time to bond over something rather than only discipline, but also a new experience of skilling for mother and for child. Secondly, if it is with the husband, a lot of times we feel that, husband-wife talk is more about commitments, priority, or only romance. But I think one very important thing that can come into the picture is the skilling part, how you make it fun for each other, have creative approach to maybe romance, and kind of uh, send messages to each other over technology using some latest technology, either sounds or stuff like that. So when you are able to play around with technology, it's going to add on to your life. It's always going to be a plus if you're using it for good reasons and for productivity. So restarting it will help when you start from the closest of circles. You have, let's say, a friends group, and I mean a reunion, a virtual reunion. Go and hang out with people online. Everybody will laugh and giggle about it, but at the end of the day, you will have a great time. And just to make that great time happen, you'll have to go through a long journey, and you will do it also because the motivation is more. So these are different ways that you can keep thinking about when you're thinking of a job eventually virtually, so that you have your bit and pieces in bits and pieces, you're having your training set. The next important thing is the rise part. So here we are looking at women, who are not at the start from scratch level, or who have already done it, took a break, and then started. We're looking at women who are already established to a certain point. They've reached a peak, a level, and now they're looking for levels above. I think one very important thing for you would be to look up some free courses online which are there. So one way to look at it is the courses in the skilling part. So when you supposedly so if you're somebody from psychology background, let's say, or if you're someone from the business economics background, I think one very fun thing to do would be, if you're from economics, study psychology course online. If you are from a psychology background, study biology or economics online. When you're able to do that, across different subjects and topics, I think it makes it very fun and exciting to challenge your brain, and the kind of activities that they'll come up with, the way people will be talking about it. I think it's going to be great fun to be able to then assess and process things and analyze things. So your brain will work differently, process differently, analyze and connect differently to be able to give you the impact that you need. Second is, if you're someone who's, again, now this is courses, now we are looking at more of let's say the technology tools that you've handled. So for instance, you are very comfortable with Zoom, let's say, for the longest time. Try Google Hangouts. If you're already comfortable with Google Hangouts, try for a new feature that's come up. Take the free trial and go for it. Another very important thing is, so here what happens is, when you Slack is one feature, which I think one app which really helps virtually communicate with people. It's not easy to use, but as you use it over a period of time, I think it can teach you a lot of things. Because there are places where you can't message this person because this person has put their message on inactive state or something like that, so they will not be notified till they come online. There are different things, there are different channels, so these things require a lot of processing, and Slack really worked for me to help me get digitally more strong, because I was struggling around with things I didn't know. Another thing to look at when you want to technically grip yourself, if you are at the level of reaching a level and rising to the next level, is going for Moodles. Look up Learn Moodle. There are many other resources there which you kind of website making. Why I'm saying is, and WordPress is very easy to make. So if you have your own little blog or something, go around and play around with it. The more you do that, your brain starts looking at things differently than it would normally if you just did a certain thing in a certain way, not so connected to technology, I mean. Third very important thing is to take courses online and watch videos of people talking virtually online, because this really helps you kind of improve your virtual skills. For a long time, when I was not into effective public speaking, I knew I was good at it, but I had my own mark, and I still do. I mean, I've reached a level, but I want to reach many more higher levels, and it's like you reach from here to here, you make another goal from here to here. Again, it might be at the same level, you'll have the third goal level, could be same, but in another domain. So what I'm trying to say is, the more expertise that you develop, I think it really pays off in the long run. Now, last point under this rise part is to have a community of like-minded women, which is why Jobs for Her kind of platform exists. And there's another platform, I think, that they've come up with, HerKey Rising. So there are platforms that Jobs for Her is coming up with for women in different levels. So if you are belonging to that type of a group which you can kind of connect with, look up, go join these groups, because you'll get the right opportunities to talk, express, get the mentorship and guidance from. So I would end on a few 2-3 points to kind of wrap up, that when it comes to acing a virtual interview, it's very important to ace in being real. The more real you are, the bigger the impact will be in front of the other person, and people who will hear, people who will see, they won't have second thoughts about you, because digital as it is creates a lot of doubts about genuinity and a lot of things, because you can't physically feel the person, see the person in front, feeling as in you can't get the real vibes in one moment. But when you're physically there, there are different things that play around to give you additional hints about something or someone. Secondly, so ace your real self, your accent, your real thought process, your look, everything. Second very important thing is to skill yourself in various things, the technology itself, the content, different content that you are used to, and to connect with people known to you personally and professionally, or through some academic circles that you were part of at school, so that different kinds of communication that you do virtually is going to pay off in the long run. And thirdly, remember, very importantly, virtual communication is no different from real communication, except that if you are able to effectively communicate and collaborate and convey your message virtually, then you are really good at that stuff, whatever you are good at, whatever is your expertise. The reason being that fake things can be pulled off in physical stuff. I'm telling you this because I know it. It's easy to kind of pull off things and sell things and convince people for physical stuff, but when it comes to a virtual thing, it has to be really powerful, impactful, and to the point. And if you do not know how to, if you're not spontaneous, if you're not skilled, you are not going to make it long in business or in impact. So thank you so much for watching this expert chat. I had a great time answering your questions, looking at all the things that you've been asking, and the kind of depth of questions that you've covered. If there are any more questions, please feel free to reach out, comment in this video itself, or you are part of groups on JobsForHer. You can ask your questions there as well, or reach out to us if you have more topics on the same subject, similar subjects. We'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you so much.